Okay, so according to the World Health Organization, gender is more than just that biological sex aspect alone. Gender refers to the characteristics, behaviors, and expectations that societies associate with girls and boys, and of course, later on in life, men and women. So, gender identity is how a person feels internally, and kind of how they identify with themselves. So, me, for example, I am a woman. I was born a woman, and I internally feel like a woman. However, there are other people who identify differently and who don't fit into that generic box of men or women. Some people identify as non binary, transgender, gender neutral, or any sort of identity that's kind of outside that box. So, sex, on the other hand, is simply biological. So sex is determined by genetics, your chromosomes and your DNA makeup, and essentially what you had when you were born and what they wrote down at the hospital. It's just what you were born with. And gender roles are the expectations that society places on people based on their gender. So according to Planned Parenthood, gender roles are social expectations that influence how people are expected to behave based on whether they are male or female. So traditionally, women have often been viewed as the sort of caregivers and homemakers. They are expected to provide that emotional support and backing. They are supposed to raise their children, maintain households, and maintain normal duties to a household like chores, cooking, gardening, etc., etc. Meanwhile, men, on the other hand, have traditionally been viewed as sort of providers and protectors. They are expected to kind of be that fierce macho man persona. They're expected to lead, provide financial support, and of course, protect their families. So whether people kind of agree with these expectations or not, these traditional roles have existed throughout much of human history, and they've influenced how families and communities function way back then and even up until now when they're being used. Okay, so personally, I believe that gender and sex are closely connected. I believe that there is a direct relationship between a person's biological sex and the gender role they traditionally occupy in society. I do understand that many people view gender as a personal choice or as something separate from biological sex. However, from my own personal experiences and beliefs, I believe that people are born as what their kind of biological makeup indicates. Like me, as I mentioned before, I was born a woman, therefore I am a woman. So while people are able to identify differently, I still believe that sex is an important foundation for not only understanding yourself and your gender, but for what role you should be upkeeping in society. I also hold this belief because, traditional gender roles developed around the natural differences that kind of existed between men and women. These differences influence how society organized their families, how they organize the work and workforce, and of course their communities, where they are at, whether it's in their city, state, etc. So while society has changed very much over time, especially as of recent, I believe that many of these differences continue to influence the roles, and people just naturally gravitate towards those roles. Again, this does not mean that every single man and every single woman is exactly the same. There are strong women out there who are leaders. There are also nurturing men who are good caregivers. And many people don't really identify themselves within those traditional expectations, or maybe they don't feel like they're as cookie cutter as possible. I personally believe that their biological sex just plays that major role in shaping them and their gender roles, and what they should take on throughout their lives. I support the traditional gender roles because I believe that they provide not only structure and stability, but kind of like clear expectations and setups, for a future society that these families and individuals can follow. So a lot of the time you hear the phrase traditional gender roles, and it might make a lot of people cringe, cower, and just not view it as equal. They think of oppression and stuff like that. That's not how I personally view them. I view them as kind of a sort of balance and a division of these responsibilities, which allows society to function properly and effectively. So in my opinion, a man should uphold the traditional responsibility of providing for and protecting his family, while of course acting as a leader within his own household. Likewise, I personally would uphold my traditional role of a woman by caring for children, supporting my family emotionally, and helping maintain the home, whether that's chores, cleaning, cooking, etc. I also do not believe that one role is more important than the other. I feel like that is where many people sort of get this assumption, that things can be oppressive, that things won't work, that one partner is being suppressed more than the other. But in fact, I believe that both roles are equally necessary for that structure and stability to actually work. Every household needs that sort of financial support. Every household needs like that sort of leader or leadership. And everyone needs that emotional support, that love at home, that stability. Traditional gender roles kind of attempt to distribute all these responsibilities evenly between different people. This way it allows everyone to work together rather than compete against one another and kind of fight for who's right. It's kind of this big idea of good cop, bad cop that shouldn't be existing in traditional gender roles. Everybody should be upholding their own personal roles in order for everyone else to be successful. Again, this works in other places. It works like a workplace. Let's say accounting completely didn't do their job. Therefore, the company doesn't know how to spend their budget. Maybe sales is going through, maybe sales is having some issues. It's just the same in general. You need both sets in different areas in order for everything to work out. Another reason that I do defend these traditional gender roles is because they have survived over centuries. Modern times, here in the Western culture, it's been upheld for a couple of centuries, and even our neighbors across the ocean. They have upheld the same type of traditional roles. Although they might have not been upheld in the most healthiest way, the basics are still there. Someone being that sort of masculine, strong person, and then someone being that sweet, caring, comforting person. I do not believe that all of this happened by accident, that these things are still being used just because. I think that these roles develop because they help families survive, raise children, maintain social order within just any society in general as well. I feel like the whole hunter-gatherer sort of woman, and then the sort of like leader sort of man, I feel like that trope also ties into this, where they need to support each other in order to survive. It's just that holding each other, having each other's back. So one of the strongest arguments for a traditional family structure or a traditional gender role sort of situation. Usually comes from research done on the people around them, for example, children. So, according to the academic journal, The Future Children, in the article Marriage and Child Well-Being Revisited, which was published through a collaboration between Princeton University and the Brookings Institution, children raised by their married biological parents generally experience better physical, cognitive, and emotional outcomes than children raised in many other family situations. So this quote really stuck out to me while I was doing my personal research. So I personally am planning to be a teacher. So my big basis would be on the children and kind of who would be benefiting from these gender roles. So this finding was really important and interesting to me. These children eventually become adults, workers, parents, leaders, just active members of society. As a teacher, I believe that, or as a future teacher, I believe that we must start with a really concrete base for these children in order to have a good, successful society. If these children grow up in these stable environments with all the sort of support, discipline, guidance, they're most likely to succeed.